Welcome to So to Speak. We remember it so you don't have to. Please don't sue us.
That's an old chestnut.
But yeah, welcome. My name's Evan Mead.
I'm Lyle Groniger.
And
you know, it's funny. We went all out last episode with the Angry Video Game Nerd. We did a cover, like a metal cover of the entire song. And here it's like Nostalgia Critic doesn't really have a song. He has the.
Well, to pick up your bass and play it, boy.
That's not a bass song. And then
Fair enough.
Then it's like he has that one song by Sad Panda. It's like, I love Dog Walker, mind you, I don't want to complain, do you? I like that song. It's just I don't really want to sing like.
Yeah, we'll get to him later. Sad Panda.
Other groups, yes.
Anyways, so on today's show, as we teased last week, this is going to be kind of a two-parter, where we talked about AVGN and Cinemassacre on our last show. Today we're going to talk about the Nostalgia Critic and how he grew his brand into something that could have been awesome, but we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Ooh.
So, unlike James Rolfe, who has his own Wikipedia page, Doug Walker, the creator of Channel Awesome and the creator of the Nostalgia Critic, or co-creator of Channel Awesome, creator of the Nostalgia Critic, he does not have his own Wikipedia page, but the Nostalgia Critic does. So, just a background on Doug Walker. He was born in Italy on a U.S. naval base because his father was stationed over there sometime in the 80s. So, just like James, Doug is also a child of the 80s nostalgia. And as an adult, after going to film school, learning the craft, Doug got inspired by James Rolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd, to do the same review formula, but with movies.
Can we talk about how he quit his job as a janitor or something?
I don't think he was a janitor. He looked way too well dressed for a janitor.
Well, he worked at some crappy job, and he quit his job by like playing the 2001 theme, also Sparks the Resta, and he like stood on a chair, ripped his shirt off, and it just wrote "I quit."
Yeah, with the words painted on his chest, taped or painted on his chest.
And he had to get the fuck out of there because he was being chased out of the building.
That's one way to quit your job.
I will say this. I mean, that's Doug for you. He's very theatrical.
Oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah.
So, his debut with the Nostalgia Critic was in the summer of 2010, after audiences everywhere were getting hyped over the Transformers movie directed by Michael Bay. Doug made a quick little review of it that was kind of, sporadic and in keeping with the tone of Transformers. It was all exciting, flashy, and he decided to continue, even though he reviewed a current movie, he decided to come back in a character called the Nostalgia Critic and basically talk about media from his childhood, and he did this with quite a few titles. All I can remember about his earlier work from 2007 was he reviewed the Ninja Turtles trilogy, but he didn't touch 3 out of respect for James, credit where credit's due, because apparently when fans asked Doug, will you ever review TMNT Ninja Turtles 3, he said, no, I will never review Ninja Turtles 3 because James Rolfe already did it, and he did it great. There's nothing more I can say, so just move on. He did review TMNT from 2007, and everyone was expecting him to like it, but he didn't like it, and the fans were really pissed off at him for that.
I didn't like it either, so... when I watch the Transformers video, it gives me a lot of flashbacks to like the Simon's Quest video that James Rolfe did, because it's like the seed of something. It's like an idea that they would both build on within each other. So it's kind of like a very, very large window.
Yeah.
That shows what they would later become.
So on that note, what was your first taste of Nostalgia Critic?
You know what? It's hard for me to remember entirely, but I think it was either the Battlefield Earth video or the Batman and Robin video. Most likely Batman and Robin, because I didn't know what Battlefield Earth was until I saw Nostalgia Critic's review. But like the Batman and Robin video, It's probably one of his best ones yet because it has like the Bat credit card joke, and there's even like a Pulp Fiction reference where Poison Ivy's like stuck in the plant. And he's just like, "Do it, motherfucker! I dare you! I double dare you! Say one more word." She's like, "Curses!" And she gets
because he's like, say the most cliched word you could for a villain that got defeated, and curses was exactly what happened. That movie, we've ranted about Batman and Robin like several times on our show. We did it in our first episode, and we did it in our DC-a-thon. There's not much more we can say about it. Doug Walker, watching Doug rip it to shreds was actually like one of the first times like thanks to that review, I went into Batman and Robin excited to see it.
Just see it again
and to this day, despite the fact that people regard it as an absolute, travesty of a superhero movie, I kind of don't really. I see it as so bad it's good.
Yeah, it's fun to watch.
Yeah,
to be honest, I think time has been somewhat kind to it
in a way. So, do you think like Batman and Robin has or will attain cult status?
I think it already has.
Oh, okay.
I mean, everyone still quotes Mr. Freeze, right?
Yeah. My first exposure to Doug Walker as Nostalgia Critic was his review of Space Jam, which was a movie that I did grow up with, and I had fond memories watching that with my brother. He ripped in the span of this is back when his reviews were short and to the point, not like an hour long like they are now.
Yeah. Times have changed.
But yeah, so back then, remember when a Nostalgia Critic review would be 15 minutes or less?
Well, he had to do that because of the YouTube restrictions. You couldn't make a content that was longer than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Back then.
Right. Speaking of, I feel like we're going to get ahead of ourselves, but we'll talk about how YouTube treated him in a bit. But first I want to kind of... Well, when I discovered him in 2008. And, I watched a Space Jam review. His review was funny. He did some good jokes. Apparently he went on this, tirade about how disgusting it was that they gave Lola Bunny bunny boobies, and then he went on this 2-minute tirade of how it's marketing agents of America, we don't want to fuck bunnies, and the furries had something else to say about that, but And just a quick side note, the funniest review I have ever seen for Space Jam belongs to The Amazing Atheist. Go check it out. It's I died laughing at that review. And so then so what were some other reviews of his that you wrote? That was my gateway review to the Nostalgia Critic. I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's funny. I'm really digging him. What do you like? What other reviews?
I think one of my favorite reviews of his, it still holds up because frankly not a lot of them do anymore.
Yeah,
it's a lot of screaming, yelling, and infantile humor.
Yeah,
but I really loved The Room review he did.
Oh yeah,
that was my gateway into so bad it's good films, and he does a really good job picking apart almost everything. And he almost got in trouble with Tommy Wiseau too, because he got his video pulled down or he got sued or something, and then he was like, "Hey, it's fair use," and Tommy Wiseau was like, "It's not."
Well,
it's not.
It's not. Anyway, so more to your point. Remember how you were saying that the fact that you saw the Battlefield Earth movie because Doug Nostalgia Critic reviewed it, that was actually a common trope that happened with... He resurrected a lot of old crummy films from the past that people were digging up in bulk to rewatch and re-enjoy thanks to him. The Room attained cult status partially because of Doug Walker himself. I find that kind of incredible because The Room was this underground movie. Had Doug's review not come out about it, I don't think The Room would have gotten as far as it did.
Yeah, that's why I was almost expecting him to have a cameo in The Disaster Artist or something.
That would have been incredible. Oh, to be fair, Doug has cameoed in a feature film. He cameoed in AVGN, the movie. So that counts.
Disaster Artist is bigger, though.
It would have been... Do you know what would have been perfect? If Doug Walker was a casting agent alongside Greg Sestero's cameo in the scene where James Franco as Tommy Wiseau is doing that horrible Southern United States, I must ask you a question. I'm from New Orleans.
I could see Doug Walker. He could have been in the audition process.
Yeah.
Like, hello, I'm Mark. I'm going to throw a football.
Like he could have been the guy that was going to play Mark.
No, it's a guy who's like trying to be a wannabe like Tom Green. Like
yeah, no,
that would have been popular back then.
I actually do kind of. See a lot of parallels between Doug Walker and Tom Green. Now that you mention it,
Christ.
I mean, Tom Green is more vulgar, but yeah,
well, he has more of a point.
That's true.
But, I have another episode. Probably even to Doug's credit, he states that this is the best episode he's ever made, and that was the Moulin Rouge episode.
I've heard that, yeah.
Which was this massive fucking collaboration with virtually everyone on the site.
What site?
Channel Awesome, I think it was at the time.
Actually, no.
Or That Guy with the Glasses. No, it was That Guy with the Glasses.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it was a pretty well done musical episode. I'm not even fond of the episode. I think the biggest highlight was Brental Floss.
Oh, God.
He's a YouTuber who does a lot of, like, video game parody songs. And he was great. It's like, love. What? Of course it doesn't need to make sense. Life doesn't make sense. Love doesn't make sense. Why does everything need to make sense? All you need is love. Love, 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 love.
That's kind of Baz Luhrmann's career in a nutshell when it comes to making movies.
The episode's even
I love
edited.
his work, though. Check it out.
The episode's even edited like a Baz Luhrmann thing. Like, he does a pretty good job imitating his style. All things considered, everyone looks like they had a good time, unlike other collaborations we'll talk about later, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
And one last thing. This isn't even like a review. I find the review itself kind of boring. But his review of Junior...
With Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And Danny DeVito was in that, too, right?
Yeah, he was. I think...
Yeah, no,
he
wasn't. Danny DeVito wasn't Junior.
Yeah,
him and Arnold collaborated twice. Twins and Junior.
Yeah, but anyways, in his Junior review, he gets so bored of the movie because there's only so many ways you can say it's not funny or it's not a good idea, and he falls asleep during the review and has a psychotic breakdown in his head where everything gets psychedelic, and he's like, "I'm so bored. There's nothing to say. I'd rather sugarcoat a leprechaun, feed it to a dog, and then go play some croquet."
He did that. He does musical numbers every once in a while. Like, remember in his Batman and Robin review, he parodies Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Where he's like, it's super crap-a-fuckerific, it's biala bullshit, a film so bad that censors really ought to go and pull it. Sadly, there's not many words that only rhyme with bullshit. No, but seriously, it's awful.
Yeah.
One of the reviews that made me laugh hard was a movie that I'm actually kind of eager to check out. It's on Disney Plus. We can riff it at any time. Kazam with Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh yeah.
Remember what? Okay, so
that's a classic.
There was something about the '90s that where Hollywood decided to take pro athletes and turn them into actors by contractual obligation.
Yeah.
It was so weird. Well, we got Michael Jordan in Space Jam, and then you had Shaq. I'm going to be honest though. I think Shaq is better at acting than Michael Jordan is, because Michael Jordan just kind of like goes through the motions. Shaq maybe can ham something up, like he can sell a crying scene or a scene where he's angry, like, and it's actually believable, but it's campy and it's enjoyable. So in his review of Kazam, the thing that there's a couple of he points out how the movie supposedly, because I need to watch Kazam, but apparently he points out how, the kid, the genie's a black dude and the kid is white, and it's like, hey, until I make those last two wishes, I own you, right? And he cringes and says, technically. So a white person owns a black person and expects them to do things for them without getting paid. There's a word for that. And then slowly the word, as he tries to figure out what it is, the word slavery fades in on the screen. That made me laugh. The other thing that made me laugh was they do a bunch of like really awkward jokes about how like the guy is being really creepy, where he's a grown-ass man following a kid around on a city street with ice cream saying, "Don't you wish you had one of these?" with this really creepy grin. And then there eventually comes a scene where he wakes up in the kid's bed, and then Doug is like, "Oh my god, bad touch!" 911 emergency! There's this guy that's been stalking this kid! Send the authorities! Hurry! And, yeah, no, the over-the-top humor was really funny while it lasted. Another review that he actually reviewed something I like. He reviewed The Lost World, and the funniest joke in that movie that actually made me laugh hard is the scene where he takes a stab at the raptor defeated by gymnastics, which even that is a stupid scene in what is otherwise a passable movie to me.
Yeah.
So that gives you a bit of an idea of how, like, his work for a couple of years was entertaining.
Yeah, we should stress that Doug Walker certainly was funny. We aren't denying that. And his content was good, and it is worth revisiting.
It really is.
Yeah.
So, but here's the thing, like, now this is where, well, Doug Walker himself did branch out. Here's how it started.
He did other things.
He started his empire on YouTube, where, unfortunately, he had multiple, like, things he did besides Nostalgia Critic. He did the Nostalgia Critic. He did this parody review series called 5-Second Movies, where he literally, like, would show abbreviated clips of a movie where it's like Lord of the Rings in 5 seconds, or, Narnia in 5 seconds. And they were very funny. Like, as far as visual punchlines go, they were great. So because YouTube was a new medium and people were uploading movie clips to YouTube in bulk, and Hollywood didn't know how to deal with it, so they just decided to throw the copyright claim hammer down on anyone that dared to use,
to be fair, the 5-second movies thing is hardly transformative.
It's not at all. Well,
so that's why he got in trouble for it.
The legal clause that a lot of YouTubers, not just Channel Awesome, fails to understand is that they think that, they understand. Doug later would launch a campaign called Where's the Fair Use? But the problem with this is fair use works like this. That people seem to think that it's covered under satire parody clause, like anything that is intended to be funny means free to use, but that clause does not legally exist anywhere. So Hollywood or a movie studio will just ding you for copyright if you use, like, clips from the movie in a non-transformative way, because even though here's the other side of the controversy, the fact that people are watching these parody reviews it's encouraging them to go check out the movies, and in turn the studio gets to make money when these movies get streamed or rented or wherever.
That was Doug's defense for sure.
And I think it's a valid defense, quite honestly. I understand there's a bit of a legal it's a legal debate that, well, we're not lawyers. We'll be here all day if we do get into that discussion.
So how do you overcome the issue of copyright?
So his 5-second movies got him his whole channel, which was called That Guy with the Glasses, kicked off of his channel got destroyed, like obliterated from YouTube. So in 2000, this was in 2007. He was purged from YouTube. In late 2007, early 2008, I discovered his work on a website called www.thatguywiththeglasses.com, where not just him, but he brought his work back, and he introduced some new programs like the Bum Reviews, where he reviewed that was started in 2008, where he started reviewing contemporary cinema. Unfortunately, that skit got really repetitive really fast.
Change! You got change!
No. Oh my god,
help a guy out here!
Oh my god, this is the greatest movie! Oh my god! This is the greatest movie I've ever seen in my life! Though there were a couple times where he innovated, though, to be fair, with the Dark Knight video. He just kind of breaks character and just like, whoa, Jesus.
He does the same thing with the Avengers. He's like, okay. He breaks character. He's like, okay, this is actually one of the greatest movies of all time, and you have to see it right now.
He did. He also tried something new with the Rango review. Remember that?
Oh yeah, where he did like a Raoul Duke impression.
Yeah. So, anyways,
didn't he also have like one where it was like video game confessions or something?
I don't know if he himself. The only other.
Yeah, he was doing like this British accent. It's like, I remember when Mario walked into my bar or something. I know
that may have been Ask That Guy, which I thought was real. That was really pretentious. Like one time, he acted like he was this British snob who was pretending to get asked like deep intellectual questions, and he would answer them with like snarky answers. It's like, why do stars emit light? And then he would say something like, because you touch yourself at night. Like, funny.
Where have I heard that joke before?
Funny. But yeah, so not only when he built this website, that guy with the glasses, he was onto something, because in addition, while James Rolfe meanwhile didn't get purged from YouTube, James did migrate to other websites. Like his work was featured on Screw Attack, which was a game website, and and GameTrailers.com, all gaming sites. So there wasn't really a site specifically for reviewing movies. Like Red Letter Media had not come into its own at this point in history.
Nope.
So that guy with the glasses.com was kind of a pioneer of sorts. So he decides to get a bunch of other content reviewers to come together under one banner, that guy with the glasses. And for a while, from 2008 to 2010, before the rebranding, it was sort of cool. I'm not going to lie. Like, I got into other content creators, like, the one I primarily watched was Film Brain, like, and the Bad Movie Beatdown series. Although, now in hindsight, it is I liked his reviews and I liked his jokes. But it's
his voice.
It's a UK. No, not so much that. It's a British guy cloning the Nostalgia Critic, and I was like, I like it. It's funny, but he's a clone of the Nostalgia Critic just in the UK.
I remember every time I watched Film Brain, because I used to watch him a lot too. I think I watched all of his videos. And every time I did, my dad would just leave the room. He's like, God, how can you listen to that guy for hours on end?
Well, Lyle, I think the reason is because he speaks in the most consistent and repetitive tone of voice.
He always seems to kind of want a lot, and then he drops his vocal intonation. You don't really understand why he does that. He's just trying to be less monotonous.
So remember how I said he's a clone of the Nostalgia Critic? It turns out that there was a reason for that. And we're going to get into that reason now. Well, what other content creators did you watch?
I do have a bit of a list here.
Okay, sure.
I think the one I watched the most, other than Doug, was Cinema Snob. And I kind of liked Brad Jones' style. He was just kind of an armchair reviewer who would talk about, like, kind of like grindhouse stuff, or like maybe even porn, or something more exploitative. He's kind of the edgier Nostalgia Critic. And then, I did watch Film Brain. I watched a little bit of Todd in the Shadows. I mean, he was funny. He was probably one of the better ones. He was definitely one of the better ones on the site. I watched early Spoonie. Not a lot of Spoonie, but some of his earlier stuff before he started doing, like, vlogs. And then a little bit of Obscurus Lupa. I did watch Angry Joe, although I have to say, like, even watching his modern stuff, I'm kind of surprised that his style really hasn't changed whatsoever. And there was also Happy Harry, who was an animator I really liked. And I even kind of checked out a little bit of The Distressed Watcher, a.k.a. TJ Kirk's old
there was a time when, up until like 2010, 2011, he was with that guy with the glasses.
Of all the people, TJ is the only one I still watch on a really regular basis.
Well, yeah, because and by the way, his content has evolved like crazy away from Channel Awesome or that guy with the glasses.
Yeah, he doesn't really do movie reviews too much anymore.
He goes on societal and political rants and media rants too, which I find brilliant. But anyways, edgy at times, but brilliant. So
those are the ones I watched. What about you?
Well, to be honest, I only really went because I wasn't very. I'm the type of guy where when I consume media, when I discover something new, I'll stick with that for a while and then I'll move on to something else. So I really watched Nostalgia Critic, bum reviews, 5-second movies occasionally, but that shit kind of wore off because they all got re-uploaded to the website. So
you're saying you mainly just watched like
I watched Doug and Film Brain.
So you didn't watch any other contributors?
To be honest, not really. I knew about them. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I did watch a couple of reviews by the Nostalgia chick, and apparently
she's doing pretty well for herself.
Oh yeah, she's doing amazing. The reality was, like, though, she was true to her name. She basically was the female equivalent of the Nostalgia Critic, and she only reviewed like girly stuff from. And at the time, this isn't a sexist claim, but her when I was discovered that guy with the glasses.com when I was 16. the content didn't appeal to me because I hadn't really seen that many movies about Disney princesses, but it kind of inspired me. That guy with the glasses.com kind of inspired me to check out, the Renaissance and princess classics that I hadn't really missed, that I hadn't really seen. So I got to watch Cinderella. I watched Hunchback of Notre Dame. Pocahontas, oh god.
Yeah, we should probably mention that a lot of the contributors to that guy with the glasses often had to emulate Doug's style in some extent.
And I feel like that's where we got to talk about the rebranding, which is where...
And the thing of it is that... I just want to finish my thought.
Yeah, sure.
The thing of it is that they each had to cover some sort of demographic. Like, you had, like, Linkara, who did comics.
Yeah.
Where you had, like, Todd in the Shadows and the Rap Critic, who did music. There were even subdivisions like Inked Reality and Blistered Thumbs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, everyone had, like, their own thing. And they had to cover that thing while Doug Walker did, like, predominantly movies.
Yeah. And I didn't know this was a problem until, like, a couple years ago, but... there is a reason why they all emulated Doug. It's because it was their job to emulate Doug, and that's what I think is very sad.
And God forbid you review a movie he touched on.
Oh God! Like, I noticed something was funny when he reviews The Room. Like, you have Linkara and Obscurus Lupa bust in the room, say, "Critic, I already reviewed this movie.
Room.
You don't have to review The Room." It's like, why can't he? Like, can't everyone have their own opinion?
Evan, you mean the room that they had, or Doug's actual room? Because I can't tell the difference. They filmed themselves in separate houses.
By the way, to go back to your point about Tommy Wiseau's reaction to Doug Walker's The Room, that's because Tommy Wiseau doesn't understand fair use any better than Doug does. So that's why he got mad.
Yeah, I do love that retaliatory skit that Tommy Wiseau.
That was great.
I think that's my favorite video.
I'm at the office of Wiseau Films, and any image you use against Tommy Wiseau is hurting his good name.
What good name? I don't have a good name. I can't even pronounce my name. I love you.
Oh boy.
It went so far, but it was great.
I'm worried that if Tommy Wiseau hears this podcast, we're gonna get flagged.
Oh no.
I
think he's accepted the joke now.
No, I think he's more down to earth because him and Doug have done interviews on the site. Like,
that's cool.
Yeah, I know, and Greg Sestero has even come back to do collaborations with them.
Oh yeah, you showed up. I remember the time you showed up.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so in 2010, it seemed a little narcissistic to have your website be called That Guy with the Glasses.com with the website's logo, literally the Looney Tunes logo with Doug's big smiley face as the center.
Grin.
Yeah. So they decided to do an inclusive rebrand called Channel Awesome. And in honor of the anniversary of the formation of their little comedy empire of media reviewing, they got all the producers together, the content producers together, to film a cinematic special called Kick-Assia. Now, this is where Lyle's going to take the reins because they did this 3 times, these anniversary specials. And, yeah, they did these 3 times, and Lyle's going to take the reins from here because...
I got to talk about all 3 of them?
Don't go in depth, like, for the sake of time.
Yeah, okay.
So, what's the plot of Kick-Assia?
The plot of Kick-Assia is essentially... the Nostalgia Critic and his comrades want to take over this incredibly small micro country called Malaysia, I believe, and it's run by one old dude, and basically they storm the place. They eventually come up with several plans that fail to try and take over the place until the guy just leaves, I think, and then they own the land, and they kind of start fighting and bickering amongst themselves. Nostalgia Critic gets a huge ego, and then they all fail to take over the land and they leave. It's not really plot driven. A lot of these movies aren't really driven much by plot. It's more like a setup to have a string of like skits and jokes in between.
It was also released as a miniseries, and then it later got re-released as a feature-length cut.
Honestly, Kick-Assia, of all three of them, I think it's the most, like, fine. Like, it's definitely, like, them at, like, maybe not the height of their powers, but when they were just starting out, and it was all kind of fun. And it's like, oh, it's a bunch of friends with a camera. It would have been nice not knowing, like, some of the issues they had, like Doug not bringing water on set while they're shooting in a fucking desert.
Yeah.
That's not good.
Well, it was more than just Doug at this point, because you couldn't... man...
I shouldn't point fingers.
It was centered around...
should have had water on set.
It appeared to be centered around one guy, but one man could not have run this whole operation. It just wouldn't have been realistic.
But, yeah, no, I'd recommend Kick-Assia if you want to kind of, like, see a time capsule where, like, everyone was kind of having fun with this. Yeah. And then we move on to Suburban Nights, which came out the next year. And Suburban Nights is technically, like, it's shot better. It has more of a storyline. And it's basically Doug wants to find this mystical item. He found a random treasure map, and he's trying to find it with his friends, and they all dress up like fantasy and adventure characters.
He's Link.
He's the only video game character, despite not being a video game reviewer.
Yeah.
Wow. And then they're being followed by this dark force, and it culminates in a big epic spanking LARP battle.
Oh yeah.
And it ends on a down note when Ma-Ti from Captain Planet dies. I don't know.
Oh, Ma-Ti.
Yeah. Suburban Nights is like... I think my biggest complaint with it is it's too fucking long. Like, Kick-Assia was a swell, like, under 90-minute kind of thing, which is all it had to be. But Suburban Nights is, like, an extra 40 minutes long, so it's, like, over 2 hours. And you think, well, I mean, it's got to be justified, right? I mean, a length like that should be justified. And it's really just a lot of padding. It's a lot of jokes that overstay their welcome. It's a lot of every character having to have to say something, because everyone's there. And everyone starts to look a little uncomfortable. Everyone feels a little ridiculous. Someone injured themselves on set while they were filming. There was like 4 injuries, and one injury, like the person after the fact had to sign a contract saying, "Oh, you can't sue us for litigations about injuring yourself. I mean, we're clear." And it's like, you don't like they did that rather than call an ambulance. So yeah. Suburban Nights was okay. I wish it wasn't so long. And then, motherfucker, we get into To Boldly Flee. And while it is the best looking film, I guess you could say.
Because they bought a newer camcorder.
They bought a new camera, a new camcorder.
No, seriously, they didn't even upgrade like to a DSLR or a Blackmagic camera. They didn't do what James Rolfe did for AVG on the movie, where they got an actual like cinema camera
and a crew.
They
paid people.
What they did was well, that's not to say that they didn't get paid. Wasn't all the other true. They paid for travel expenses because they had to fly some creators from Europe in, like Sad Panda had to come in from France.
Film Brain from England.
Film Brain. What is Film Brain's name again?
Matthew Buck.
Matthew Buck had to come in from the UK, so they had to fly. They had to pay for transoceanic flights, and they covered meal and hotel costs. But other than that, no one got paid for their time, which is bullshit.
Yeah, because on To Boldly Flee, essentially, Evan, what they had to do is they had to shoot a 3.5 hour film in a week.
In 1 week.
In 1 week. They would work 18 to 19 hour days.
Okay.
A lot of the time the crew had to sleep in the in between scenes they were in.
To put that into perspective, the average feature film that's 2 hours long has 2.5, sometimes 3 weeks of principal photography.
Mm-hmm.
Your mini-series or movie is 3 hours long, and you want to do it in a week.
Yeah.
That is shit.
That is really bad. Yeah, and at this point, a lot of people, you can kind of see it in their faces, like they aren't having nearly as much fun as they did earlier.
Well, that was the big reveal where
Yeah, by the end of the movie, I'm not getting into the plot because I'm not gonna waste your time, but by the end of the movie, Doug Walker essentially says that he is done being the Nostalgia Critic, and he kills his character off by sacrificing himself to this portal called the Plot Hole. And he becomes a god at the end. He's like, "Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic. I remember it, so you don't have to.
That sounds kind of self-indulgent. I haven't seen it, but the way you're describing it
there's
to me...
literally a scene where Doug Walker, as himself, talks to the Nostalgia Critic.
Okay, how much does the Nostalgia Critic character differ from Doug's real-life personality? I don't think that much.
Not by much, no. Yeah. Yeah, and the problem was, by the end of the film, it's when it dawned on creators that the site might be either going down or everyone is essentially going to stop making reviews.
Because that was people's literal bread and butter. Like, people were paying for homes, making money off that site.
Yeah.
Off the work they did.
Yeah. There's just, like, a lot of things about Tivoli Flea I don't like, especially the scene where, like, Robo Linkara has, like, an altercation with Lindsay Ellis, the nostalgia chick, which Doug had to tone down, but didn't matter, because the next scene, they're all like, oh, someone had sex, and Drew Wario was like, I can smell the pheromones.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
Everything about that scene was awful. And there's just, it's too fucking long. I don't know why they made it 3.5 hours. I already hate most movies that are 3.5 hours unless they have a damn good reason to be that long.
Like, if they're an epic.
Like, say, like, Seventh Samurai or something like that. Like,
or Return of the King.
Return of the King. Like, Lord of the Rings, it's fine. But, like, if it's a bunch of dopes just hanging around their mom's basement saying, like, ooh, we're in a spaceship. Then it's like, no, you cut this motherfucker down.
And by the way, the VFX artist who was Phelan, who he essentially did work for next to nothing, or he either worked for peanuts or next to nothing, I can't remember. But apparently they praised him to his face, and then behind their back hired another guy to make changes. How sleazy.
Honestly, like, he's one of the better parts of all these movies, because he's like, well, what are we gonna do now? Like, he's almost like, he just always points out all the issues, and he doesn't, every scene he's in where he's like, you can clearly tell he doesn't give a fuck, he just clearly doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Another highlight of all three of these movies, like, the one singularity that I liked was the James Rolfe cameo.
Oh, yeah.
Each and every time he shows up, and I'm like, oh.
You showed me the James Rolfe cameo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The one in Tivoli Flea is probably my favorite because, like, James kind of, like, gives him, like, a nice send-off, and it's like, oh,
yeah, these
two. I remember back in the day when they fought each other in the collaboration video in James's basement.
That was neat.
That was a nice callback. Yeah. But, yeah, and I think after Tivoli Flea, they did this anniversary special. The last one they did was, like, a short film anthology thing. I didn't see it. It looked boring, and I don't hear too many people say too much about it because they didn't have the money to make another film, and not too many people were interested. Yeah, because of like the amount of bullshit they had to put up.
Well, the next thing on my list to talk about is after Tivoli Flea, after this big anniversary, this is what they did. After Nostalgia Critic supposedly quote died, end quote. Doug was like, okay, what are we going to do now for our website? Because Channel Awesome...
He retired the character.
He retired the character, which was the flagship series of the site. So what's going to happen now? Yeah. And another problem was they were not adequately promoting the other content creators as well as Doug. And that was actually a controversy that was going to be exposed much later, but we'll get to that. So, unfortunately, the flagship series gone, and all these creators who are... contributing to, these projects that Doug dreams up in his head, like, they're not getting promoted. So it's like, what are we going to do now? So Doug decides to change things up by launching a new series called Demo Reel. It was so shit that he had no, like, it did not bring in the same amount of views. It didn't get as much praise. So they figured, let's just bring back the Nostalgia Critic. And
don't forget his game show, which he actually suckered people out of hard-earned money.
Was that all of Doug's fault? I feel like we're kind of shitting on Doug a little too much, but to be fair, like, because Channel Awesome is bigger than just Doug. We have to remember that. Okay, well,
anyways, Pop
Quiz
Hot Shot was fucking horrible. And
I have seen Pop Quiz Hot Shots. It's... Okay,
like you would never guess they spent thousands of dollars on this.
They asked for like $60,000 or $50,000. They got $90,000 because their fans wanted to see them produce something good. That money disappeared into thin air, and the best they could come up with was. By the way, had Indiegogo not investigated them for defrauding the fans, they would that project never would have seen the light of day. Because what happens is, if you create an Indiegogo project and you don't deliver, the website has grounds to investigate you and then charge you for fraud because you're taking people's money and running away.
Yeah.
If you have to, in order to get around getting sued or charged, you have to release the bare minimum of what you promised, and they did that. They promised like 40 episodes of Pop Quiz Hot Shots, and they only released 12 of them or something.
They redid the pilot a few times.
Yeah, no, it feels like the show had no tone at all. The show is a meandering, directionless mess. Yeah. Kind of like, our show is at times. But anyway, so the show makes no sense. The references are bad. Doug's formula for comedy is just, make a reference equals funny.
This was around the time I started losing interest in Nostalgia Critic. When he came back and he brought the actors Malcolm and Rachel back for from demo reel.
By the time he 2011 is when I stopped watching Nostalgia Critic because he started reviewing movies that I thought were legitimately good, and whenever people had contrarian opinions, he was his character and the real person was very snobbish and arrogant about them. That's one of the things I didn't like. Other content creators I was watching at the time, if you disagreed with their views on movies, they would always leave a disclaimer saying, it's cool, you're free to disagree. But with Doug, at one point he said, and I would like to remind you that this is all opinion-based. Except I have an online show, which makes my opinion better than yours. Nah. And I'm like, are you being... You're I feel like you're mostly not joking there.
Yeah, I think the time I quit watching Nostalgia Critic was I can literally pinpoint it. It's when he released the Man of Steel video with the collab he did with Angry Joe.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I wasn't really big into Angry Joe at that time either, but I don't know, the video was 40 motherfucking minutes long, and I was I could just watch the movie or this review twice, and I would still get as much information.
Yeah, that's true.
And it got to the point where it's well, I'm so tired of his length. I'm so tired. I just don't care
It's
anymore.
at a point now where his reviews take up either half of or 3/4 the runtime of the movie.
I know, and it's insane. And it's I don't want to sit through this if it's just gonna be skit after unfunny skit. And by the end of the video, the last 2 minutes, he finally makes a conclusion that actually tells how he feels about the movie, which is why I was there in the first place. Well, yeah, I don't know. It just got too much.
Yeah, no, I feel like he eventually had to do that because people had trouble differentiating Doug's real opinion from the critic's opinion, and they don't differ that much. Quite honestly, honestly, although sometimes people had to understand. People couldn't tell if Doug was being serious or not. But a lot of the time, when Doug himself would break character and say, "Okay, here's what I really thought," it was basically a more mature version of the review he just gave us, except not as much potty mouth. So,
but we must move on to.
So we're getting a little. So we're dwelling on this a little too much. We haven't even gone to the worst of it. Well, I didn't really.
The worst of it.
Well, I told you that I lost interest in 2011 because I started going to film school and I veered away from his opinion, which I started to find obnoxious on movies. So I was listening to film school instructors at the time. So I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to people who actually make professional movies for a living, not guys who make online videos. And by the way, I should mention on that note that the quality standard of YouTube entertainment back in 2011 was not what it is today. Now, if people are going to be YouTubers, you got to put an effort. That's one of the things I actually admire. People who consider filmmaking as a real living are making that living on YouTube, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're kind of into another age of reviewing where it's mostly video essays or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your movie sucks, or Ralph the Movie Maker, or I Hate Everything, or even Red Letter Media has still been pretty strong as of yet.
Yeah. So and on the last note I'm gonna make about Pop Quiz Hot Shots, first term film students at my school have made better shit than what they made with Pop Quiz Hot Shots. Let's leave it at that.
Way less than $90,000.
Yeah. So now comes the controversy. at the beginning of April, on April 2nd, 2018, a Google Doc was released to the internet titled "Not So Awesome," and then that spawned the hashtag #ChangeTheChannel. This means that most of, I am not kidding, the 90% of all the content creators on Channel Awesome left the site. I am not exaggerating or joking about this.
I would say more than 90%.
Like 95%.
90, maybe 98. The only ones left are Doug, Brad Jones, and Guru Larry. Compared to like
what about
50 people.
What about Tamara and Tamara? What's that guy? Tamara. What about Tamara and Malcolm?
I think Malcolm's still there. Tamara, I think, is still there too. Rachel left.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
So, in this document, so we talked about quite a few controversial things that happened behind the scenes on these productions. It turns out there was way more controversial shit than we could have imagined. All the controversies we were alluding to, they were all happening for a reason, because the sad reality is a lot of these content creators were not treated fairly by upper management. And that's why I want to stress that it's not all Doug's fault that these people got treated so badly. Some people have come to the defense of Doug, saying that he was kind of oblivious to the fact that this was going on. Here's what happened. The reason why so much shit went down is because they grew their empire into something that could have been truly special. But what happened was they ran into a problem where no one wanted the job of CEO of an actual company. They gave the job to a dude named Mike McCod, or it's either Mike, I'm not quite sure. I've heard his last name pronounced a few ways. Mike Michaud was given the title of CEO of channelawesome.com because no one wanted the job. That is the worst reason ever to give someone the title of CEO, but they did it anyway. And not only did they give Mike Michaud the title of CEO, they gave him the intellectual property rights to the Nostalgia Critic. So now, Doug Walker might be kind of a victim in this situation where he cannot leave Channel Awesome without losing he cannot take the Nostalgia Critic away from Channel Awesome because Mike Michaud owns the rights to it.
Yeah.
Why?
And they can't kick Mike Michaud either.
Yeah, no, he should be, because like, okay, we're not going to go into every grimy detail of this document because I've read the document.
Yeah, me too.
It's actually, I read it late at night with no music on in the dark of my apartment. It's actually kind of a scary experience, like under the circumstances in which I chose to read it. It's very unsettling. There's a lot of really dark stories that just came to the surface that time in 2018. But a lot of stuff people already knew, like Obscurus Lupa getting fired for failing to show up to a Skype call for 15 tedious minutes. Like, 15, you're late for a Skype call for 15 measly minutes and you're gone? That's really shitty. And not only that, by this time, Channel Awesome had a reputation for firing people for over, semantics. But they did this to female content creators more so than to male content creators. Yeah. And this is where it gets really dark, because it would later be revealed that not only was one of the content producers sexually grooming underage fans and being a sexual deviant to them, but one of the guys at the top, like next in line to leadership after Mike Michaud, is this dude named Mike Ellis. He was married, and he tried to pursue the company's HR lady for a relationship, and she repetitively turned him down. He wasn't fired immediately. He was fired after over a year of Mike Michaud knowing that this shit's going on. And then when he was fired, they were scared that he was gonna come after the site's HR, Holly. So they had to take Holly to a safe house, and it sounds almost like a cartoon because Doug and Rob Walker showed up with swords and baseball bats to guard her, like as they took her from her home to the car to the undisclosed location of the safe house.
That's not the only sad story with Holly.
Oh no, it's not. Well, you might think Doug is a hero based on what I just told you, how he supposedly came to Holly's defense. But that was when Ellis was fired. Holly Brown, the site's HR lady, was one of the most dedicated people. She was one of the most dedicated
people behind the site.
People behind the site. She worked holidays. She worked through all kinds of shit she didn't need to work through. She was so dedicated. And then right after a major surgery, they fired her. And unfortunately, in the state of Illinois, a company is not legally allowed, which the company's based in Illinois, a company in that state is not legally obligated to tell you why you're fired. They can just fire you with impunity without cause. Mm-hmm. It's bullshit, but it happened, and it gets worse.
Yeah, it gets worse.
Not only did they fire her without cause, a day after she came out of major surgery, what they also did was, they were so scared of losing her to competitive sites that they forced her to sign an agreement saying that she would not work in the industry of content creation for over 3 years.
Or else she wouldn't get the money, severance pay.
Yeah, no, they denied her severance pay. And by the way, how she got that severance pay is tragic in itself, because they told her, you have to come to the office in Chicago to pick it up, which she couldn't do because the doctor said it's not safe for you to drive. You know, it's a surgery.
Yeah, it's a very unethical thing.
Yeah.
And I'm very amazed that they actually even put her through all that.
Well, it's horrible, but remember how I said Doug seemed like a hero for coming to her defense after the whole Mike Ellis? Walker was the deciding vote to fire her. Guys, do you still think this guy is completely innocent? I mean, people have said Doug is just an innocent victim in this situation, and to a degree he might be, but he's not innocent in everything.
No.
He really isn't. If anything, he is either complicit in all of this and is in a really awkward situation where he struggles with his conscience.
Or blissfully unaware.
Yeah.
Well, not anymore, but
still. Okay, so what do you think is the most unethical shit that... Do you think the Holly Brown incident was the most unethical shit that they put these people through? Or
honestly, that was pretty bad. Honestly, and Obscurus Lupa was pretty unethical too. It almost seemed like they were trying to make an excuse to fire her.
Yeah. What happened to Mars Girl was pretty nasty too, and Lindsay Ellis.
Yeah, a lot of them were mistreated.
Yeah.
The Tom White debacle, where he was in the middle of
yeah.
Where, like, basically anyone who was, like, either brand new to the site or not as huge on the site would just be, like, pushed down further and further.
Yeah.
In favor of more popular people on the site, like Doug or Linkara or, like, Brad Jones. And it was just, it was like a packing order, essentially. And if you weren't, like, top of the heap, you were, like, down the bottom, and your shit would get almost no views.
Yeah, that shit happened to Gonzo, where
Gonzo, that was his name.
Dr. Gonzo was treated so badly that, like, he was undersold on the site, and then after Jew Wario very tragically committed suicide, Gonzo was like, I want to pay tribute to him. He's my friend. Mike Michaud was like, no, it's not going to get views. Like, how fucked up do you have to be to say something like that?
Yeah, like, nobody gives a shit about you. Don't even try. We'll get Doug or somebody to do it.
And, like, so, you might think Mike Michaud, he's just doing his job, being the tough guy who has to make tough decisions. No, Mike Michaud is a piece of shit.
There's no call for his actions, honestly. Yeah. A lot of the stuff he does is 100% uncalled for.
Yeah. And when he did find out that, you know, Mike Ellis was a deviant creep, his response was, God damn it, I told him to stop doing that shit.
God damn it, I told him to stop doing that.
It's like this guy is not being professional. He's making people sexually uncomfortable. He's committing a crime, and it's like he's stalking people, and it's like, that's all you have to say? Yeah. God damn it, I told him to knock it off. Like,
yeah, speaking of people being creeps, I guess we should probably talk about, like, how Spoonie got, like, kicked off the site.
Yeah.
Briefly, but, like, basically, Spoonie has, like, emotion. He is emotionally, like, unwell. He does state many times that he has bipolar disorder. But at the same time, his actions online are really unsound. There was a time where he was talking to Obscurus Lupa and Mars Girl, or maybe Jesu Otaku, I'm not sure. But anyways, he basically had a Twitter war with them, like just this little comment thread, and he said, "I wish I could do things to you, like tie you up and do things to you sexually," and she's just like, "What the fuck?" And rather than de-escalate the situation, she's like, sorry, the damage was already done, and he kind of made it worse, and yeah, just made everyone uncomfortable. And I think that was like the time where like a lot of fans started to like stop watching him, and he stopped making content as regularly, and eventually, yeah, because of his actions, he got kicked off the site. Not in a matter of minutes either. Like it took like a little bit, a few months, and he got like a farewell message from everyone on the community.
And compare that to Obscurus Lupa or Mars Girl. Their when they got kicked off, no send off. Their content was taken down instantly, and the site basically erased any fragment of their existence.
Yeah, Spoonie was treated far better in that regard.
So I think there's a bit of a moral like that we can take away from all this. First off, like there's not really much more we can say because we're just kind of beating a dead horse at this point.
Yeah.
All I'm gonna say, you touched upon the Tom White scenario a little bit. Here's what happened. Tom White allegedly, well, not allegedly, it was in the document. He ran a sweepstakes where they donated a game console to the winner. They didn't have a prize, so they donated a game console. The winner was a guy of the sweepstakes was a guy in Russia, and he didn't receive the prize for months. And then Tom White failed to meet an uploading deadline one time, even though he did give notice, and he was taken down instantly, like for failing. Even though he had not missed an upload deadline once, the site's administrators were just like, okay, yeah, that's just the way we run things. Like if you can't make your deadlines, like that's shit. Like. Cut these people some breaks. Seriously.
Yeah, I don't understand why the deadlines are so important. It's almost like you had to upload on a specific day in order to avoid getting, rubbing the wrong shoulders of like some like higher up.
Yeah, and so I feel before we say we're not just gonna. Do you want us one last thing and then I don't?
I have one last thing. It's not related to the document, but I remember the heavy backlash that Doug got for his Pink Floyd The Wall review.
Oh right.
Yeah, I honestly don't think I could sit through it. I usually can't really sit through Doug's content anymore, but like with the Wall, which I think is a perfectly good movie. It does a really good job like conveying the imagery of the wall in like a visual medium such as film. It almost feels like one long music video. It's kind of experimental in that regard. But like he just kept calling it pretentious or too long, or is like, oh, this song's an Oscar bait song. It's like, no, it's not. It's off the album, which came out like 10 years after before the movie came out. So like, what the hell are you talking about? And then it ends with like a really bad like a CGI like interpretation of the trial scene, and Corey Taylor from Slipknot's in there, and his son, and they rather than have him play a cover or something and make it really awesome, they're just like, oh, play the SpongeBob SquarePants song.
Why would you go to the trouble to get a guest star of that fame
from a serious metal band,
and you have them play SpongeBob, which has nothing to do with Pink Floyd?
No.
Yeah,
very I feel critically panned review.
But I feel like that's a great note to end on. I'm just one last thing about the document. We described a bunch of stuff that happens in it. If you want to learn more, visit your local internet connection. Go to. You can find most YouTubers will interpret the document in their own videos.
It's been touched on several times.
It had. Well, it was touched on right after the big bombshell was dropped in 2018. But here's the deal. I'd recommend watching Quentin reviews Fallen Titans, his episode on Fallen Titans dedicated specifically to Channel Awesome. I'd also recommend Cinematic Venom, who made an hour and 20-minute video about the whole controversy, and he actually took the time to read and interpret the document verbatim in that video. So
yeah, both of them are quite good.
Yeah, no, check out their videos if you want to learn more about this controversy, and I implore you, please make your own decision, like form your own conclusions, like just based on everything you see. Like, don't take we're not the be-all, end-all of opinions on, so to speak, here. We're just two dudes in a Toronto apartment rambling about stuff we find interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So
what do you want to end on?
Also, it's worth mentioning, I'm not going to say which producer I know, but I do know one of the producers who worked on Channel Awesome and is in this document. I'm not going to say who it is, but, like, I know them because I am close friends with one of their immediate family members. So, yeah. That's all I really gotta say. But I feel like, the note you ended on with the wall, like, it's really telling as to, like, how this site fell from grace. And the reason I wanted to kind of make this sort of a two-parter with the Angry Video Game Nerd and the Nostalgia Critic and Channel Awesome versus Cinemassacre is because, to me, it's such a stark contrast as to how these two, like, media review giants turned out. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, Doug technically has 3 feature films to his name.
Yeah.
They're not,
they're not astounding.
They're not astounding. James Rolfe has 1 feature film to his name, possibly more in the future. But, they feuded in 2008 when both of these guys were new and, like, dominating the media review world.
Yeah, YouTube.
They were dominating YouTube at the time, and they were titans that went to war with each other, and it was fun to watch. Like King Kong versus Godzilla or Batman versus Superman.
It was all good fun. Yeah.
It was all good fun, but they went in drastically different directions. It is worth mentioning, though, that, with James Rolfe, when he took time away from the Cinemassacre brand to go make his movie, Mike Mattei was left to run stuff. There are a lot of Mikes in this situation.
Right.
Mike Ellis, Mike Michaud, Mike Mattei. But yeah, so what happened with Mike Mattei, like, while James took time away from Cinemassacre?
Well, Mike made some of his own content. We didn't mention this in the last podcast, but it was kind of like gross, like, not just like scatological, but just kind of perverse. Like, I remember one video he did like a review of Elmo and Grouchland, and he just did nothing but say a bunch of like ugly sex jokes, and it wasn't funny at all. And like a lot of people are like, pull this off. James wouldn't make content like this.
It's like he tried to capitalize on the edgelord factor, but he went too far.
Yeah, Mike's an edgy guy. He's kind of weird, but like and then James, I think, had to apologize for him and delete the videos. But that's like the most controversy I can think of with Cinemassacre. If that's the
only controversy that Cinemassacre has to its name, then they're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and Mike's toned it down, and they do like video game videos, like
think about
Let's
this.
Plays.
Like on Cinemassacre, that brand name is ran by less than 10 people with no crazy power tripping leadership at the top. It's just James and his friends just creating a bunch of cool content, and their subscriber account keeps going up. Like, with Doug was having fun with YouTube. He got purged from YouTube and decided to create, with his friends and family, a better version of YouTube. And it looked like it was doing well, and then it came crashing down into what it is today. Something that, is slowly but surely fading from relevancy. Like, and think about this, like, they did this with a power structure, like, and bad business decisions. Like, this is like unethical shit that involved loss of life. Like, not like we like, yeah, and I mentioned the Jew Wario suicide. Like, yeah, this is loss of life we're talking about, and life-threatening situations where, you have to drive to Chicago when you're against doctor's orders. Like, this is not cool. So the point is, it's just astounding to me that, like, I like both of these content creators. Like Doug Walker, when I was watching him at the age of 16, his earlier stuff, it was really good. And the whole world of, reviewing movies online kind of left Doug in the dust. And Doug, while he does try to innovate to this day, it's the same shtick.
Yeah,
and
he has not progressed that much.
Yeah.
If the wall review is anything to go on.
Yeah.
But it's sad, too. Like, I agree with you, Evan. Like, I spent a lot of my formative years in high school just watching a lot of his content and getting kind of into criticism. I would do criticism myself. But I think my problem is it's the pessimism.
Yeah.
It's the fact that we have to nitpick and rip things apart and jab at things rather than really take things as a whole.
Yeah.
That kind of led to things like CinemaSins and other people who would just like jab at things and like really rip things apart.
I do think it's really cool that Hollywood is scared of not only the Nostalgia Critic for the copyright fiasco, but for CinemaSins for tainting people's perception on movies itself. Because people are now thanks to CinemaSins, people are now at a point where they are confusing satire for legitimate criticism, and it's affecting the way movies are making money at the box office. That's insane.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The internet criticism has come a long way.
Yeah. So, that's all we really have to say. Go check out, the early stuff that they've done. Oh, but I feel like I forgot something. Speaking of comedians that think reference equals comedy, what do we got next week, Lyle? We'll see you next time.